thank you, Sheriff, again for joining us. We are all members of the Los Angeles Times editorial board. My name is Robert Green. We've met before. We're with Terry Tang is the editorial pages editor. Mario Garza is the deputy editorial pages editor. Editorial writers here include myself, Carla Hall, Laura Rosenhall, and Tony Barboza. And this is for purposes of our decision on an endorsement. We are on the record. And what I'd like to do is give you a few minutes to talk about your term as sheriff and why you believe you should be re-elected. No secret, we've said things about you on our page that are critical, and you have returned the favor. So feel free to discuss any of those things as we will, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Well, I'll make it real simple for you. I think whatever you said to me in the past, I think is immaterial, because I think the public wants to be safe. The public wants to feel like they're not going to be mugged, shot, killed, raped in their own home. The public wants to see that homelessness crisis is resolved. And it's not just more platitudes, more studies, more commissions, more taxes. They want answers to those two big things: violent crime and homelessness. You can swap which one is first depending on how close or far you are from an encampment or the most recent crime. That's what people want. So what your opinion is of that, well, I think it's becoming irrelevant really now. You've been writing editorial after editorial about housing first, the need for housing. You've been ramming it down every single editorial writing you've done. And the public is just sick and tired of that. They have very different opinions. They want a hands-on approach that's going to get people the help they need so they don't die on the streets, and give the streets and the public space back to the community. It's a pretty simple equation, actually. And I understand this, and I'm going to work well. I'm hoping I get a good partner for the next mayor of LA that treats it as a humanitarian crisis that it is, and one that needs to be resolved now. And this whole, your position of a housing first only solution is ludicrous on face value. It's a dynamic problem that's getting bigger, not smaller. And I'm going to work hard to make it happen. Our host team is doing a wonderful job. I just need the rest of city and county government to embrace the same philosophy.
Sheriff, you said that what people want is to be safe. Can you talk about what you've done in the last 4 years to make people safe, and the degree to which it has succeeded or not?
Well, let's start with civil unrest in 2020. While the Fairfax district, Long Beach, and Santa Monica were burning down and being pretty much sacked, not because of the cops on the street doing their job, is because of the crowd in charge of them. And this is why I use awoke in its full term, told their chiefs of police not to do anything lest they upset the rioters. And so they literally sat on their hands and did nothing until it spiraled out of control. And then they were compelled to react. And of course, the reaction was probably more than they needed to had they been addressing it in the first place. I'll give you a prime example: Beverly Hills. They had called us for help hours ahead of the problem. We were there. There was no problem. Rodeo Drive did not get destroyed. But you look at the promenade in Santa Monica, look at Long Beach, look at Fairfax. This is all prime examples of how not to handle civil unrest. I had 20,000 protesters surrounding the Hall of Justice at the peak of the civil unrest period. Not a single arrest, not a single use of force. So we protected and defended people's rights to exercise their First Amendment rights to protest. But that did not involve letting people destroy businesses, destroying jobs, and just ruining entire sections of the county. So that's a prime example of how to do things the right way. Same thing when it involves crime, serious crime. Look at our wage theft task force. The undocumented and even union workers lose on average $26 million a week to wage theft. That's a week. That's $1.5 billion lost a year in LA County alone. I mean, it's more than all of the crimes added up together. And you folks, it wasn't important for you. You had nothing to say about it. But for the community that's working, the wage earners, your hotel, restaurant, travel industry, the home care industries, construction, car wash, the garment industry, all of those where you have a lot of wage earners on the low end of the minimum wage, barely above minimum wage, for them, wage theft is a huge reality. It's what, separates how much food they're going to put on the table. And you guys had nothing to say about it because you don't care. That's the problem. Your set of values, what you think people care about and what actually matters on the street, are two way different things.
So talk about the wage theft task force and what you've accomplished. How many arrests, what changes have been made?
Well, a lot of changes have been made because one is we put teeth into the enforcement side that didn't exist before. So we reached out and we formed a partnership with the State Labor Commission. We have a dedicated DA from the district attorney's office from Lacey's administration, and it was carried over into Gascon. So that was actually a nice thing. And now we have deputies in patrol. They've been trained on how to actually prepare reports on wage theft, allegations of wage theft. We have investigators from our Special Victims Bureau that assess these and determine if it's a criminal act or if it's a potential civil dispute. And the civil ones are referred to the Labor Commission. And we're also working in the Office of Immigrant Affairs at the county level to just pass on the information that wage theft is a huge crime and it impacts a lot of people in the wrong way. So we're working hard on that.
So what can you tell us about the results?
Well, the results at the front end, now we're facing the big challenges of actually, we have about 115 million in wage theft judgments that we're trying to find ways to collect. So that's been our first big challenge. So our Civil Management Bureau, the levy crew, is now working with the Labor Commission to figure out how to collect on successful claims that have been already adjudicated by the courts. That's one component of it. The other component, we're seeing some early results. We had an arrest of a man in, I think it was Almani, and he was a foreign national who was running a business, a boiler operation, where he had people that he was denying them the wages, and he was basically defrauding them, and it rise to a criminal level. So we got a warrant, seized property, got him arrested, and that is being presented to the DA for prosecution. So that's a very good case, an early win. And the other note is now employers are realizing, wow, there's consequences. So what we're doing is we're leveling the playing field because you have honest employers that have to compete with unscrupulous employers. And that's unfair competition right there. So we're trying to level that playing field. So a lot of it is education, pushing the information out to the deputies in patrol, and that's already working. So now we're starting to see the reports come in, and they're trickling our way through the system we set up. So I think we're on a good path.
You have criticized the Board of Supervisors for defunding the department, for cutting your budget. The CEO claims that that didn't happen. In fact, your budget went up this year. So please walk us through your analysis of how it is your budget has been cut and how it's affected you in your department.
Well, it's pretty simple. Our department is permanently underfunded, anywhere from $300 to $400 million a year, underfunded.
So before your tenure, that goes back to before your tenure?
That goes back a long, long time. But I have in fact, it's on our website. If you go to the fiscal year 2016, 2017, and now that's about 6 fiscal years ago, our budget was 3.3 billion. The county's budget was 29.9 billion. So we were 11.85% of the county's total budget. Today, our budget stands at 3.5 billion, and the county's budget has swollen to 39.3 billion. So now we've dropped to 8.9% of the county's budget. Our costs have increased extraordinarily during this time frame. And this is something I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the term net county cost.
Yes.
And that is pretty much the general fund of the county, what the county pays out of pocket. Well, I have here Riverside County devotes 38% of their net county costs towards law enforcement. Orange County, 25%. Ventura, 32%. San Bernardino, 22%, and LA County is standing at 16% of net county cost. And so if they raise my budget from 3.54 to 3.61, something to that effect, but my costs increased by more than 300 million, that is defunding. When you take 1,281 positions away from my department, budgeted positions, that is defunding the department. When you cut my academy classes from 12 a year in 2019 to 7 in 2020, down to 3 in 2021 and 3 in 2022, that is defunding. So the CEO is being extremely dishonest when she says we're not being defunded. We're the only department in the entire county, the 37 county departments, that is currently being actively defunded, and we have a hiring freeze. Come April 1st, I'm facing a sworn shortfall of 927 sworn positions. That's on top of the 1,281 they cut from me. 927 come April 1st. And that means my patrol operations, they're running at 70% capacity of staffing levels, just due to attrition, injury on duty, workers' comp claims, and all that. So I'm down to 70%. So we've raised the ceiling of how much hours a deputy can work in overtime from 96 hours a month to 120 hours a month. And now instead of 12 days in a row, they can work up to 30 days in a row. This is the accommodation we've had to make to basically make up for the shortfall of manpower. Our detective division has lost 25% of their personnel. Our internal affairs has lost 20% of their personnel. Our crime lab, I haven't hired anybody from the crime lab since I've been in office, all because of the county's hiring freeze. This is negatively impacting public safety. In the jails right now, it's risen to the level now that the county is going to be on the receiving end of a lawsuit, not just by me, but by the federal government, because the federal monitors in the consent decree have declared that this has risen to a level of a constitutional crisis, the level of care in the jails, all because of the board's hiring freezes and efforts to try to close jails with people still in them, and they can't go anywhere. So we got some big problems here. You have a corrupt board of supervisors, and somehow you still are harboring this fantasy that they're ethical public servants out there trying to somehow serve the public's interest. Remember, Mark Ridley Thomas was a leading entity with this whole plan, and he's now indicted federally. So I think we got to keep things in perspective. Yes, we have been defunded massively.
It sounds like what you're saying is that your department is under the same hiring strictures as every other department, and that your budget has risen less than you want others to. No, well, so please explain.
The county budget they approved, they even said it, that we are the department that has a hard hiring freeze. They lifted the hiring freeze of every other county department. I don't know if you didn't get the memo or you just didn't read the county's own documents. They put it in writing. And not only that, they thought that there were going to be this massive budget shortfall because of the pandemic. It turned out to be the exact opposite. There was a massive budget surplus. They're sitting on a $2.5 billion surplus right now. And so every department can hire except the sheriff's department. And this, yeah, go to the record. It's all public record.
You said the Board of Supervisors is corrupt. Can you explain that? You mentioned Mark Ridley Thomas. The indictment is public, so I understand what you're saying there. Talk about how the Board of Supervisors as an entity is corrupt.
Well, they're the executive and the legislative branch of government. They have no oversight. They have no accountability. They have no transparency. They do whatever they want. They appoint every single commission, every single panel, blue ribbon group, focus group, task force, alternatives to incarceration, Office of Diversion and Reentry, jail closure implementation team, public safety realignment team. Every single one of these entities ascribes to one ideology only, And they are all appointed by the board. They control over 200 of these commissions. And their sole goal really is to perpetuate county government controlled by these five, well, they used to call them the five little kings, and now they're, I don't know if you can call them five little queens or not, but same idea. The royal court, let's call them that.
Well, so you're saying that the Board of Supervisors, by its very nature, by its structure, is corrupt? I mean, you've described the Board of Supervisors as it's structured and as it's existed for a century.
It's corrupt, fundamentally corrupt for a simple reason. They're both branches of government in one body. There should be a county mayor. So you have a true executive branch of government, and they should only be a legislative branch of government. Look at the city of LA in comparison. Not that they're a shining example of good governance, but you have a mayor and you have a city council. You have an elected controller for the city of LA. You have some built-in checks and balances that don't exist in county government. It's been the county way. Why do you think, when's the last time a county supervisor was unseated? Try to think long and hard about that. It hardly ever happens. And there's a reason why. Because all the contracting that goes on, you look at what Mark Ridley Thomas did to get indicted and compare that to what your average supervisor does. I have a hard time distinguishing what's the difference. Look at Sheila Kuehl's Peace Over Violence with Patty Giggins. They're fighting tooth and nail over a search warrant that's already been approved by a judge. This is a criminal search warrant, and they're fighting it tooth and nail, while at the same time, they're denouncing me for asserting my constitutional right to challenge a political subpoena. I don't think you even want to know the difference there. But if you're not paying attention, again, it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to people on the street.
Actually, Sheriff, we agree with you on the structure of county government. We've called for an elected executive, a larger board of supervisors, better checks and balances. I'm not sure that arguing that county government is poorly structured is the same as arguing that it's corrupt.
Well, look at what they did with the Civilian Oversight Commission. Look at what they did with the Inspector General. Inspector General, he's now a named suspect on a criminal complaint that's sitting in the Attorney General's office. And what does County Council do? They write a letter trying to convince the Attorney General not to investigate the act or take action on the criminal complaint, but to investigate the investigation. That's corruption. That's actually obstruction of justice right there. This is the same group of supervisors that lobbied Javier Becerra to create this pattern and practice investigation of the Sheriff's Department with no information at all to sustain it. It was all based on, 50 years of this, 50 years of that, and he's defying oversight. No, we want ethical oversight. And you know very well what due process involves. You know what a deliberative process, there has to be multiple perspectives on any panel to have any validity to it. But when the board appoints the entire oversight commission and they're dead silent when McDonald is in office and when I come in office, all of a sudden, like with this whole issue about the deputy gangs, oh my God, this, oh my God, that. But what has happened in my 3.5 years in office? Nothing. What had happened the previous 47.5 years? They had nothing to say about it when someone else was in office. So I do have to take exception to this. And the whole oversight apparatus, the Inspector General, is just a political attack machine from the board. They don't even bother hiding it anymore. How do you do a town hall and advertise, hey, anybody got anything bad to say about the sheriff? Come on to our town hall. Then they're going to pass it off as some legitimate exercise in outreach. It's not. It's a farce. And then they announced magically last week, oh my God, we have an oversight. We're going to do this special investigation to get to the bottom of the deputy gangs. They keep hammering this deputy gangs. And I'm saying, show me some facts. They can't produce facts. They say, well, we got a tattoo here. We got a tattoo there. We had an incident 10 years ago or 120 years ago. No, I need facts to make employment decisions. And the facts I have had, we've acted on them the way we're supposed to, according to the rule of law. And we're not going to go off road and go rogue. just because we want to make a political statement. We have to abide by the rules that we have.
Sheriff, it seems like there's obviously a lot of conflict between you and the board. Since they control your budget and the purse strings, how do you get your agenda done? Why should there be confidence that you can do anything, since clearly you don't have a working relationship? One that will get them to change their budget to your liking.
Well, there's going to be an election now, obviously, and the Board of Supervisors is going to change. And
who are you endorsing?
How's that?
Who are you endorsing?
I haven't endorsed anybody, but I anticipate there's going to be a change. I only need one more vote. I just need 3. I don't need a whole new board. I just need 3 votes. And I think the politicians are starting to smell or understand which way the wind is blowing. People want public safety. They're tired of this whole reimagined public safety. That was an utter disaster and failure because it amounted to defunding the sheriff's department. And there's a backlash now. Hilda Solis is going to be in the fight for her life against 3 unknowns because people understand she represents defunding the sheriff's department. Put that on your resume when you want to run for re-election as supervisor.
Sheriff, let me ask you something about homelessness. If you could do anything you wanted without political interference, how would you deal with homeless people?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to happen at the same time. We need to build up the capacity to treat those with mental illness.
And how would you do that?
Well, we had a mental health treatment center set to be constructed. We were going to tear down Men's Central Jail, replace it with a mental health treatment center, but it required building up other facilities in Mariloma, East Facility, for example. So there was a lot. And that was $80 million boondoggle that the Board of Supervisors did. In fact, you guys, I don't think you even mentioned it. You had to read between the lines to understand they made one decision that cost them $80 million. And now fast forward, go full circle. And now the board is about to get hit by a lawsuit that's going to be supported by the California State Sheriff's Association. And we're joining with the federal government against the Board of Supervisors, specifically because we do not have the capacity to treat inmates that have mental health issues. And that is the same group that goes in and out of jail and on the streets. We have to build capacity. The board, it keeps wasting their time and their money, throwing at all these 501c3s. They're unaccountable and they produce no results.
Well, who are you talking about when you say the 501c3s?
Well, I talked about the homeless industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the top, again, why are you folks not reporting on this? How much billions of dollars is being shoveled into this complex? They're all 501c3s. How much money is coming back to the board by way of campaign contributions? Do you know what the salaries of the top 15 CEOs of these 501c3s are? They make more money than I do.
Okay, I guess you're talking about service providers, right?
Yes.
So are you talking about the service providers who do outreach on the street, or are you talking about the service providers who provide services in housing?
They're both. You have St. Joseph Center, you have Pathway, you have Urban Alchemy.
Right.
There's a long list of them. And why is it that they do so well financially? And why does the board, the supervisor, receive campaign contributions from the directors of all these 501c3s? In fact, more importantly, why are you not reporting on this?
But
this is this relationship. You're dead silent on it.
What is it that, and you think that they have not done a good job of housing homeless people?
They're doing a horrendous job for many reasons. Number one, they're treating it like, pretending like it's a static problem. It's a dynamic one. The more you enable dependency, the more you offer free things, the bigger the crowd you attract. Just like you turn on a light outdoors at night, a lot of moths come to the light. Turn off the light, the moths go away. Right now, we're the #1 destination for homeless in the entire nation. They're coming right here. Every person that shows up here takes away service from one of our own residents in LA County.
So beyond the mental health facility, then what else would you do? I mean,
Well, you need
to,
to do the same for substance abuse, of course. You need to build up shelter capacity. Massively, you got to ramp up shelter capacity because this is a humanitarian crisis. You know the numbers yourself.
Mhm.
We lose 5 a day on the streets. And that's a tragedy in of itself. 5 a day. Life expectancy drops 30 years if you're living on a tent on a sidewalk. I mean, that is just horrendous. But those 5 a day adds up to 1,600 a year just last year alone. So that is huge. Does law enforcement have to be involved? Yes. Unfortunately, we have to be the ones that regulates public space. We have to be the ones that end up picking up the people end up dying, working with the coroners, working with the fire department. And we just scrape them up and keep moving on. But
so
that
would
is,
you arrest people on the street?
I want to arrest the drug dealers that are supplying all the dope to everyone on the street and they're dying left and right. I need a prosecutor that's actually going to prosecute these sales. And now the question is, Carla, do you think it's compassionate for someone to die on the street?
I don't want to see anyone die on the street any more
Okay.
than you do.
So if I arrest them, take them to jail, clean them up, get them medically stabilized, get their weight up, and then transition them to supportive housing with all the wraparound services, would that be criminalizing them or would that be saving their life?
I would argue that, and I wonder what Lieutenant Dietrich would say about this, but I would argue you don't have to arrest homeless people off the street. If you really have permanent supportive housing for them, then work with them and get them into permanent supportive housing. They don't need the intermediate step of jail.
That permanent supportive housing does not exist or not to the capacity it needs to. That's the whole point, Carla.
I agree with that too.
It doesn't. And why is the supervised? Why are they not building that permanent supportive housing?
Well,
The mentally ill, that's 70% of the equation. You folks in your editorials, I've been following all your homeless editorials. You were seeing that same number until somebody decided within you, I don't know who in this crowd, hey, it's not 70% anymore. Let's downplay that. And no, the number is still 70 because we have the hard numbers on the street. We see it every day because we're out there on the street. And it is, that number is very accurate. Venice Boardwalk, I had 23 states represented on the Venice Boardwalk. So when you go to all of the tourist destinations, we have a high percentage of out-of-state people that go there. They're attracted to these tourist destinations. You go to Skid Row, not so much. It's more locally generated. So you have a wide diversity of populations among the homeless. What you don't see are undocumented on the streets homeless. They walk 2,000 miles to get here. They come here to work. They don't come here to smoke dope and sit on the beach and wait for the mailman. It's an entirely different situation. But if we continue enabling dependency and normalizing deviancy, we're only creating a bigger and bigger problem. Look at San Francisco. That is a nightmare. Do we need to have a poop application for our cell phones for LA? I mean, how far do you want to take this failed experiment? In fact, you cannot even admit that it's failed because your ideology, and I'll call it the woke ideology, is that it's housing first and law enforcement can't be involved and you call them unhoused neighbors. I'm sorry. I met Lucian and he came from Maryland by way of Tennessee, 22 years old. He's enjoyed the nomadic lifestyle, went to Venice to smoke dope, live on the beach, have a great time, and everybody comes and delivers him free stuff. He is not my unhoused neighbor. He's someone that needs to go back to Tennessee. And someone has to defend Los Angeles. It's not going to be you, that's for sure.
Sheriff, can you talk about the report that the Times had about the incident in March 2021 about a deputy kneeling on somebody's neck? There was an allegation that that there was a cover-up. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, actually, we found out quite a bit about that incident, and we're going to have a lot to say about it this afternoon. And so I'll save my fire for that, but I will say this. On Saturday, I had my re-election kickoff, and in fact, I still have the picture here. I saved it. This is what This is what you guys wrote. Let me put it there. It's backwards. I don't know how to fix that.
No, we can see it.
You see it forward?
Yeah.
This is your headline. Fearing bad publicity, LASD covered up case of deputy who knelt on inmate's head. Okay, well, I went through the whole article, and you're going to find out this afternoon why dead wrong you are, but you're also going to find out that when your reporter writes a sensational story like this, she might want to actually check and verify her resources before you commit it to print. Because after the article was written the next day, then she sends me a batch of questions that might have been useful to answer her before she put this in print. And you'd realize that it was, but this was the goal, was the headline. Just like when you wrote that article about the Inspector General found 41 deputy gang members or something like that. The information was a year old. When your favorite food critic, Gustavo Arellano, writes a 3-part thing, all of that, you had 5 hit pieces, I think, in the span of 3 days. And then I do my announcement on Saturday. You folks are working in collaboration with the Board of Supervisors. You're working very well. And I got handed to you. It's quite the machine you got going. And sadly you're not informing the public. You're just trying to advocate to the public that you can't trust the sheriff. And you're going to have, I'm sending you something in writing. You're going to get it today. And I kind of understand where you guys are coming. I know you have a dwindling readership. You rely on the far left and the woke crowd. That's your readership base right now. I'm your clickbait, because I'm the Trump of LA, according to you folks. And so I help you sell your newspaper. In fact, you should be thankful for it. And there's his, in fact, I have a long list of things. I'll send it to you. You'll get it now.
Sheriff, we're members of the editorial board. We read the stuff in the news section the same time that you do. We don't have any control over what they report. We just write editorials. Fair enough to criticize us for our opinions, because that's what we do. We do opinion, but I mean, you're welcome to criticize us for things that we don't have any control over, but just let you know, we don't. We write editorials.
You know, here's something you guys are not aware of, and I asked this of one of my advisors, my constitutional policing advisors, who came from the county counsel's office. So this person very well versed. How many lawsuits has the county done against the sheriff's department in the past administrations? She said none. She's tallying up all the lawsuits of the current board against me. I mean, they're breaking historical ground here, starving the department of funds, launching lawsuit after lawsuit against me. They hired the first law firm to sue me in my first month in office. Who in their right mind does something like that?
Well, why do you think they did that? Why do you think they're picking on you as opposed to other sheriffs who came before you?
Because they want a sheriff they can control. I violated the #1 rule of the political establishment. You don't talk about the Fight Club. I pointed out corruption, and I can't have that. Every past sheriff, every past DA did one thing very important. They told all the powerful people, hey, they're looking at you. You may not want to do this. And that phone call, I don't make those phone calls. You know who I call? When I come across an allegation of a crime, I investigate it myself. I refer to the Attorney General. I refer to the FBI. Those are the people that I call. I don't call the involved parties to give them the heads up. That's not my job. My job is to investigate. That freaks the living daylights out of the Board of Supervisors and the political establishment. And they've been very, very busy since I've been in office. Mark Ridley Thomas, Sheila Kuehl, the main 2 players. And everything they did was to lobby the LA County Democratic Party to start, hey, let's start pushing back against the sheriff. Let's start bringing up this deputy gang thing. And it's fallen apart. 2 lawsuits in a row, been kicked out of court with prejudice. And did the Times cover that? No. But when Astroberto Gonzalez was all over, oh my God, deputy gangs and the executioners, this and that, he was quoted. We lost count of how many times this thing was quoted, but it was thrown out of court with prejudice and the attorney was sanctioned. Crickets. You guys never mentioned that. And that was a foundation of so many things you wrote about. And again, it goes to the fact you guys have an agenda and you're an advocacy paper. And I can definitely tell it.
Can I ask, just to follow up on that, what in your mind was the inciting event that sort of broke the relationship with the Board of Supervisors? Because you'd mentioned pointing out corruption, and I'm just trying to pinpoint, where you think the relationship went sour and why.
Well, it's pretty simple. When I defeated McDonald, that wasn't going to happen. You do realize that Max Huntsman, one, he's a Holocaust denier. I don't know if you're aware of that. I have it from two separate sources. And he filed a complaint against me because I referred to him as Max Gustav Huntsman. His actual legal name is on his bar card. And he filed a complaint I thought that was kind of humorous.
So you're saying that the fact that you got elected was the inciting event? Because you had mentioned that you pointed out corruption. I'm just trying to figure out what it was.
June of 2018, when I made it past the primary and I defeated the odds, that's when the illegal downloading of my personnel file started. The personnel file of everyone who was attached to my campaign who was from the department, their files started being downloaded by McDonald's executives and by the Inspector General. That was illegal. So when it came to our attention, when I took office, we launched the investigation, and then we handed the product over to the Attorney General's office. We're waiting on an answer from the Attorney General. So the entire time, they've been working hard to undermine, discredit, defund the department, and they're desperate. And you're the gatekeeper of the political establishment. At least that's what you perceive yourself to be. And it's a sad state of affairs because I need to have a good partners with the Board of Supervisors. I'm running the nation's largest sheriff's department with so many challenges. And I've had to do this in the teeth of opposition over and over again. You know how many agenda items the board has put on their agenda and voted on? They were just hit pieces against the department. We lost count, I think, at 93. And that was about last month, they were at 93. And we did the same exercise with 4 years of McDonald. You know how many numbers we came up with? 9 total. So when they don't like the sheriff, they find all the buttons to push, all the leverage. Do you know that county council has been denying me legal representation since I've been in office? And this is a struggle in of itself, to the point now that we have to seek outside conflict counsel. And then we have to fight to get the conflict counsel, even as they're suing me, or as they're telling me we cannot have advice, that there are counsel. So then we ask, well, who do you represent? We represent the board. And we get this circular argument, and they're doing some bizarre stuff. Everything about the Oversight Commission subpoenas was launched by denying me legal representation from the very onset of the problem. And now it's catching up to them, because now we have a lot of stuff regarding our custody operation that the county is going to fail miserably, but you're not reporting on it. Have you ever reported on what the outcome of the alternatives to incarceration is? The Office of Diversion and Reentry, how much money has been poured into that rabbit hole and what has come out of it? You have no clue, because you're not even asking those questions. But I'm hearing Aline Chekmedian is calling all of my campaign contributors and asking them, have you been pressured into donate to the sheriff's race? I'm wondering, do you guys ask the same question of all the mayor candidates? I thought that's very bizarre. So this is your paper.
But Sheriff, you didn't answer the question about why it is the Board of Supervisors, you believe they're out to get you, other than it's merely the fact that you won.
Well, it's real simple. When you're a corrupt government body, you do not want an independently elected person who has the power to investigate camped out right in the middle of your operation. It's very inconvenient. You need someone who's going to be collaborate and look the other way when required. I'm not that guy. I never was that guy. And they want absolute control of everything. So that's what it boils down to. It's sad, but that's what it is. In fact, you've been advocating to have an appointed sheriff. I've seen appointed chiefs of police in civil unrest. It's not a pretty sight. I could only imagine, had the sheriff been appointed in 2020, what would have happened? How far the burning and the looting, the vandalism would have gone. The only thing that stopped it is we went out there and we just literally stopped it without killing anybody, without maiming anybody, with minimal force. It was very effective. You didn't report on that either.
Have you been able to uncover any evidence of corruption that the Board of Supervisors has been engaged in? I mean, that's what you're saying that they feared, is having an independent person looking at their operations. And so have you done that? And
well, I'll tell you this.
Have the fears come true?
When we initiated the inquiry on the breach, our data breach of our personnel files, that generated 4 separate investigations. And those investigations, some of them have been taken over by the FBI. They're active, they're ongoing. And I'll give you a prime example. When the board gifted outgoing CEO Sachi Hamai $1.5 million, you know what it takes to sue and get money from the county if you claim to be a victim of any kind of harassment? You got to jump through hoops. You don't get a simple letter with no investigation, no complaint process. And you folks didn't even ask the question. You went to your go-to, oh, we'll ask, what was it, Lori Levinson, one of the Levinsons? Oh yeah, we'll ask them, we'll get their opinion. And it's a joke, because she'll give you whatever opinion you want to fit your editorial. But where was the inquiry about how did she receive that money and why? Do you know that the attorney representing them was representing both the county and her as an individual, which is a violation of ethics for the bar? And that's corruption. She was paid off $1.5 million. And that became a criminal investigation as well. A lot of things that the board is doing are investigations. I can't comment on where they're at or who's doing the investigations. I can tell you that they're not resolved overnight. They take time. Mark Ridley Thomas's investigation took about 3 years. And that's with the FBI and the full access to all the resources they have. Public corruption is not an easy thing to resolve.
And you're saying you're responsible for those investigations?
Well, we're responsible for initiating or taking the information, and then we pass it off to the appropriate investigative body, just depending on what type of a crime or potential crime it is. And when there's conflict, we always seek to resolve the conflict or invite someone to investigate with us.
Sheriff, you just said that Max Huntsman is a Holocaust denier.
Yes.
What's the evidence of that?
We have it from 2 very credible sources, and I'm not going to divulge them at this time, but I think I don't think you give a lot of credibility that he has a title Inspector General, and oh my God, it sounds like so important and credible, but he's just a political appointee from the board, nothing more.
Yeah,
and,
but that's different from him being a Holocaust denier, which you just said. So
there's a lot you need to learn about him, and I think you need to start doing your own homework on him.
Well, why would I do that homework? You're the one who said it, but now you're saying you can't offer any evidence for us to believe what you've just said.
Well, I think we have the information, and in due time we'll release it. But I think you need to do your homework, because you don't. You spend all your time doing homework about our department, but strangely, when it comes to the operation of the entire county government, you really don't do anything at all.
Are there other Holocaust deniers we should also investigate or interview?
He's the very first one I've ever come across. And I found it interesting that he occupies such a high position.
Well, he's been there for like going on 10 years, right? I mean, long before you got into office. So
He was appointed back in 14 or 15, right after
2013 or so.
CCJV. But for some reason,
2013.
he was very inactive when McDonald was in office, and he found his voice as soon as I took office. Look at his work product. Look at the information they're cranking out now. But you had the Oversight Commission, you had the Inspector General. They really were just twiddling their thumbs when McDonald was in office and bad things were happening. Heck, you had an assistant sheriff driving around in a stolen vehicle. And there was a cover up behind that, but you guys didn't bother investigating that either. And again, it's selective.
So do you think he should be investigated and
Well,
prosecuted for public corruption? I mean, obviously it would apply to the IG.
well, that's going to be an answer for the AG to a question for the AG to answer. We don't know the answer to that. We've made the elements of the crime. That's why the report was written. We handed it over to the AG, and now the county is lobbying furiously for the AG not to investigate it, but to investigate the investigator. And that is that's corruption right there. And I'll wait and see what the AG says. But for our department, if we have an employee who's named as a suspect in a felony crime, the person is relieved of duty. But what does the board do with Max Huntsman? Oh, go write more reports. Hey, do more press releases. Keep hammering away as if he has any credibility. He doesn't have any credibility anymore. But you folks keep touting the next press release from the Inspector General is some insightful, credible thing. You know how many cases that he refused to acknowledge what we do? Case example, Kennedy Hall. He wrote the scathing report and he references your paper, the LA Times. I think you referenced it over 30 times about the Kennedy Hall incident. We investigated criminally. We gave it to the DA. DA did a DA reject, and then we investigated it administratively. And that's how we fired 4 people. We suspended 22. We transferred a lot of people. We swapped out the entire command staff of East LA Station. And you're still writing, and he still writes in the present tense as if there's something going on at East LA right now. And you never grasp the idea that whole subgroups and cliques, they're a point in time and they're gone. They move, they scatter to the 4 winds. That's all it amounts to. But you're still operating as if it's a continuous ongoing presence at one location. No, it's generational and it transfers out. And that is something he just can't admit.
Are you opposed to having anyone in that office or having an IG altogether?
I want an IG, I want an elected IG, and I want the IG to cover all of county government. Because there's way too much corruption going on throughout all of county government. And if it's a political appointee, well, they're not gonna do much. Look at Mike Giannacco under Lee Baca. Baca appointed Giannacco to Office of Independent Review. I personally gave Mike Giannacco all of the evidence on the test cheating scandal that Paul Tanaka had engineered. They did nothing with it. They just round filed it. So the board is doing the exact same thing with Max Huntsman. Has them do their political attack machine, and that's it. Doesn't do anything that I need him to do. Supposedly he critiques our service comment reviews, and he does these quarterly reports. Oh, they had 93 or whatever, 100 something service comment reports, but he never speaks about a single case, about what we did right or what we did wrong. When it comes to internal affairs investigations, I'd love to have an Inspector General who's someone unbiased, third party, look at the quality of it and tell us, yeah, you need to beef up this area, or this is an area of concern. I take that as good information that we can use it. Same thing with our homicide investigation or deputy involved shooting investigations. You know how much input we get from him? Nothing at all. Then he claims that he didn't get stuff when he gets everything. So he doesn't give us any value. And I need to have that value in Inspector General. It needs to be a credible one. Do you know there's an association of Inspector Generals in the United States? And they have a value statement, mission statement. he violates pretty much every single protocol of what inspector generals are.
I had a question, since you talked at the beginning about the rise in crime. I was wondering if you personally take responsibility for that. Is this a national trend? Is it something that you would take responsibility for, in addition to the kind of this constant discord and breakdown in the relationship with county government? Why should we expect any of that to improve if we reelect you? What would you do differently in another term?
Well, I'm working hard to get more deputies on the streets, more investigators, and improve the conditions in our jails, for one thing. And when the board puts down their or stops their routine of discrediting the sheriff's department, part of our problem we're having, especially when it comes to arresting people, they've been told again and again, you can't trust the sheriffs. They're all gang members or whatever. And that's coming straight out of the supervisor's mouth. That comes out of the commission's mouth, the inspector general's mouth. I have an entire branch of government telling everyone not to trust the sheriff, as we have to go out there and convince people to submit to our authority when you have to arrest them. They're creating conflict that is totally unnecessary. If they can't say anything, if they would just be quiet and let the process take its course, if there's a concern, address the concern, but they're not. They have a campaign to discredit us and defund us. That has consequences, Tony.
What are you going to do about that? What would
when
change?
we have 70% staffing levels in patrol, exactly how much more resource do I have out there to throw? I'm cobbling together resources now to continue what we did last summer, which was do the patrols in the beach. And that's very important because we want tourists to come to LA County, not to run away from LA County. You folks don't write about that at all. You don't give a rat's ass about the state of the economy of LA County and the importance of the tourism industry, the impact of homelessness. You know how many cancellations that LA area hotels receive? People show up and they cancel out, they leave early. You know why? Because they're aghast at all the homelessness, the level of crime. I got the chief of LAPD saying, hey, don't wear fancy watches or drive fancy cars. That's part of the culture of LA. That's part of who we are, our identity, and we're losing it because everyone's afraid to do something. And I don't think you understand exactly what we can and cannot do. We have to work in conjunction with the rest of government. We have to work in conjunction with the community. I have a community advisory councils now, and I've expanded on what Baca did, but we've actually improved on it because he had a very flawed governance model for advisory council. They became just re-election things where people were in there for their own personal gain, not to actually benefit the communities. So we're doing the outreach, the town halls. I've done 91 town halls since I've been in office. And what we're doing is we're pushing back against a false narrative. I'd rather use that energy to actually working with the community and figure out ways to solve crime. When we had to close all the youth activity leagues, you know how many kids were left without a safe place to go after school, do their homework, have mentoring, have assistance, do all the different programs that are available in YLs. And we asked the board to fund them and they refused to fund them because came out of my budget, but there was no funding stream attached. So we did the impossible with our budget to make it leaner, more effective. But now we can't make a rock bleed. There's nowhere else to go in terms of our budget. We need the resources to be able to go out there. Our detectives are doing miracles with the resources they have. When we hit the high desert and we started dismantling all the marijuana grows, you know, the cartels were in full control of the high desert. They were scaring the local residents, armed, and they were losing the water supply, the farmers up there. Not that you guys reported on it, but that was a major impact. So we did that June of last year. We did that large scale invasion of the high desert. That was 205 search warrants done over 10 days. That was over $1 billion of illegal marijuana seized. And we put a huge dent. That was about 40% of the operation in the high desert we took out in 2 weeks. And now we need to continue doing that because a lot of that is tied to violence in the basin. Because all the illegal dispensaries in the basin, all those cash operations, that's where you're having a lot of crime. We're having a lot of robberies now, shootings, we have murders. And it's not going to be solved by defunding the sheriff's department. So any notion you have about ambassadors on the trains, for example, we have to go on the trains, on the platforms, tell everyone it's safe. And right now, that is not happening. You have the MTA board wants to get rid of all the cops, replace them with ambassadors. That's not going to make anybody any safer. So I have very concrete plans of what we're doing because we have things that work. Our host team works, our Met team works. But if you defund them, there's nothing left to work with because I don't have the personnel. So we're going to continue that.
Sheriff, we've come to the end of our time. We have another candidate for another office that we have to go to. Thank you for taking the time with us. You mentioned that you are recording this yourself. So I take it you don't need me to send you our recording. Is that correct?
No, send it to me if you can.
I will.
All right.
I will.
And I will send you our, we have something in writing for you. We're going to send you.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sheriff.